Okay, everybody. First of all, I did a little thing on Let's Get Real, down to the evolution of the brain. Now, there's a lot of things that goes on in people's mind when I say evolution. I think it goes against the principles of beliefs, and that's not true. It actually conforms and proves. No matter how much you think of time that it took for it, there's still a process in which you do it. It's like a cake. Just does not appear on the shelf. There is a process. A tree does not disappear in the woods. There is a process. A whale does not just find the krill. There is a process. Everything there is a process. And that's all evolution is. Darwin's theory of it is that two of the same species of birds living on an island and keep on fighting for the same food source. One species will develop a beak specialized with a certain type of flower, while the other one will develop a beak made for another type of flower. Therefore, they can live in harmony with each other. And that's what Darwin's suggested. Everybody took it that there was evolution, that man evolved from this, evolved from that. No, that's not what I'm saying. Man has always been man. A man was never anything else but a man. Period. Even though evidence does not show that life started in one place. Even though they try to narrow it down toward this the region where it's happened, all they did was show the longitude and latitude of where human life could start. That doesn't mean that's the only place that it started. No, that's not what it means. It means that one particular point that can pinpoint and say, yes, this is where the oldest living human beings are at. But there's been another oldest living human being that was a lot shorter than that one that was found in Africa. And where was it found? On a little island out in the Pacific. I'll let you look that up and find out where it's at. Now, I want to light this up. Right now, everything's kind of blurry. So I'm going to bring you over here to where you're not blurry, to where you can see me better. Come on, focus. There we go. And I want to talk to you about some things that happen in our evolution of human beings. Now, the scientists our human DNA is all over the earth. It's been there for millions of years. And it would take millions of years for any type of life with our DNA to start forming. But then again, they have found our DNA in the life of trees. They found our DNA in certain type of fish. They have found our DNA in waters all across the world. But in order for us to become humans, there were certain things that had to come out just right. It's not just our DNA. It took certain viruses, certain bacteria, microbial propagation that had to happen for our DNA to develop into a human being. And one of those things that it needed was a constant amount of heat. And now, as I have found with our DNA that's in Yellowstone and around Old Faithful and all like that, that there are certain type of DNA and little life forms happening there that are closely resemble to our DNA. Not quite, but close. which leads me to know that what we started out from was very small, and we grew to where we are. You know, there's a story about giants upon the earth. Well, I have a feeling that we are the giant, because in the evolution and the growth of man, and I won't stop saying evolution, only after I say this, that there's a temperate zone throughout the whole world earth where it becomes sustainable for human life to begin. Even though the continents drifted apart, at one time they were closer together. But within that temperate zone that's there, let it focus back in, human life begins. And in that human life, come on, autofocus. There we go, going back. In that temperate zone, human beings didn't start just one place. For if you think that the waters were just right in one place, you'd be dead wrong. Just like trees didn't just start in one place and propagate throughout the whole world. We know that it started all many different places on the earth. That's why no two trees are the same, but yet they grow in the same temperate zone just perfectly. Um, we didn't start out in just one place. We started off in many places. And that's what I'm talking about with the evolution part. Each human being developed their own little specialty in surviving. As to that of the birds on this one island. I ain't going to tell you which one because I still want you to look it up. But just know this, each human is different, but only because of the area where they were first developed. And the development of human beings, it's like a blink of an eye, it happened with over a course of a few years. Because once it started all over. And the first humans coming out may have come out in Africa, we don't know. May have come out in Brazil, may have come out in North America, may have come out in Australia. We don't know that because the timeline for that happening for us would be so short and so small that it would be within 50, 100, 200, maybe 500 years. And during the development, we see what happens within 100 years. Imagine what the first humans to come out. Well, the first humans may wind up getting lapped up by other biological materials. And these other biological materials may develop before us. I'm thinking on one in particular, and that's a cockroach. It developed before us, but we did take other microbial in bacteria may have absorbed us during the time. Now, we wouldn't have legs, head, none of that. We wouldn't be that. We would just be a blob, a goo. We would be like a slimy substance. But that's how we got moved. But yet we were able to absorb the nourishment within whatever we landed on or was part of in order to grow. I'm sure we'll probably pass through the intestines of many different type of biological things here. We may have been dogs, may have been cat, lion, destroy us. Just like the seed of an apple that is eaten by a horse. A horse don't digest the apple, but when everything comes out the end, that apple seed is planted, and the nourishment that is gets it to grow. Um, that's what would have happened to us. I'm trying not to get off track with this. I'm trying to keep it on to one thing. But from a goo and stuff like that, we learn to develop certain things. First thing will be how to protect ourselves against the elements. And that would be the first thing. So some of us would develop hair or fuzz or some type of layer upon what we were that would fly, poison, or be something else living at that time did not want to have anything to do with. But the protection from the element was the main thing. And from protection of the element, we still need food and nourishment. So the first thing we would need to do after that would learn how to move. It had to learn how to move. Regardless if it had arms, legs, neck, or anything else, it had to move. And from that movement, regardless of how it chose, maybe by wind or attaching itself to another biological being upon the earth at the time, that had to happen. We had to learn how to protect ourselves. And the very first thing we need to do after movement was to protect ourselves. So we had to be able to sense danger or problems that were coming. Very unsuccessful, but we had to develop senses. That means nerve fibers and stuff like that. We can see that in the moon jellyfish, where it lives in such a great abundance, and it can sense everybody around it, and it knows what is danger and what's not because of the actions of the others around it. We need to be like that. Something else we had to do, we had to find a way to save and store this knowledge. And before we could save and store this knowledge, we had to find a better way of moving. So, unlike some of the biologicals, like the fish or the snake or the alligator or turtle, we had developed some way to develop parts that can move us and compel us. And the first thing that we probably would develop would be limbs, not a head. The head would come later because you have to imagine this thing need to move from one food source to another. And at the time, they could probably eat just about anything. And some things probably would kill them, but then again, the knowledge of what killed them would be passed on to others that come by and sniff or realize that that could be dangerous. So that becomes a learning point. But what they had to do as they developed ways of moving is how to store this knowledge and how to sense it. And so this twofold, it had to happen together, and it probably took hundreds, if not thousands, of these little human DNA blobs slithering, crawling, whatever, across the earth and stuff like that, to finally get to where it could feel danger around it. That would be senses, not just in the way that you would think the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue type of thing. It would be something they could sense and feel from the earth and wind and things around it. So it had to develop an organism which would later become our skin, which is still the largest organ that is for the human body, that has senses on it. It would still have the hair. We would still be able to move around, but it would develop the skin that would lead to be able to detect things coming around us. And from developing skin, and regardless we had arms, legs, or hands, or anything like that right now, we did have the skin. We still had the fuzzy stuff on us, a hair or whatever. And some of us didn't need it, depending upon the temperate zone. We would be light, dark, middle shade, whatever. We could even find out that the sun could kill us, or a lack of sun could kill us, and different things like that. Just the environment around like that could kill us. So we had to develop other means and other things. But those senses that was in the skin, in the organs, not the organs, in the skin and in the being learning, had to go and be stored. And this would be in the brain stem. At the time, evolution would not have a human being with a higher brain. You have to follow the procedure of it, okay? And this is a procedure. This is not the evolution of men. This is the process of becoming who we are right now. We are already human beings, even though we're just little blobs of spots upon the earth. We may be no more than lacking upon a rock or whatever, but we were, and we did have skin, we had fur, or different things upon us. Then we would develop a more positive way of moving. And through some of the biological that may have grabbed us and digested us or spit us out wherever we were, we learned to develop legs. Legs would be the first appendages, and arms, not hands and feet, but we had to have appendages. Just like fish had to have fins upon their body and a tail. The fins help steer them, the tail helps move them, and they learn by changing one direction to another how to move through the water. We would have to do the same thing in our development, in our process. So we may not have feet, but we may have legs. And then as we found that by adding a knee cap and a lower leg and then feet and along with the arm, you got the forearms, and you got the elbow, and then the hands that would come along. And this would be hundreds of years in the making for it to become like that. But in the meantime, all we had was the central nervous system, the sciatic nervous system that was there. And all this information would be brought to just the brainstem, not us, middle brain, cerebral cortex, or anything like that. We were just developing just the brainstem that would teach us to act or read. That action would be determined by the senses that came into it. Danger, no danger, food or no food. Uh, Elements harming it, elements not harming it. These would be the developments of a human being. These would be the beginning stages. And it may take another 1,000 years or more before we even learn to stand, before the feet and legs and hands became to where we could stand straight up. We may have been where all we had to do was move on all fours. And our nourishment may have not come from our head, like the word nourishment doesn't come from his head, even though it does now, but we may have been to where all we needed was just a brain stem, and it may have been no more than a nubbing in the center. And the center soon developed to where it was at one place, the hands move in one direction while the feet would move in the same direction. So we developed that movement in one direction, so that's where the brainstem will be there at the middle of it. But it was the brainstem that was beginning. Now, there's another part of the brain that came right after that, because we had to understand that all this needs to be passed down from generation to generation. And how this done, and at the time, our development was more mitosis than it was anything else. And mitosis may have been no more than simply laying these watery eggs out in different places here and there, just like a toad does, different places. And the human being's developing, but coming up with a full knowledge of how to take care of itself and feed itself. It didn't need a mother or whatever. We may have been able to consume our own, so we probably found ways of hiding it here and there. But that would be how we would propagate. This is before there was ever male or female. I want you to realize that. So our propagation didn't come until way later. Way later did we become male and female. And even before we became male and female, at one time, we carried both. We were asexual. We were both male and female, because that would be the natural progression of our origin. Because without becoming asexual, we could not multiply at the rate that we did. I mean, to have to wait for just one male to come along for us to propagate, grow, to be multiples? No. And we didn't have time to nurse or anything like that. So most of what we had was laying eggs that were they could take and devour themselves up, or having young that within 24 hours or just a few hours could walk and run around just like a baby chicken or baby duck. Now they want a parent, they'll attach themselves to a parent, but baby chicks and baby ducks don't need a parent. You leave them alone and they'll figure out what to eat, what not to eat, where to drink, when to drink. They'll figure out how to scratch in the dirt, get the food and nourishment they need. This is a life of them. We would be like that. More over so, we would be no more than just a few centimeters tall in size. We would weigh more than just a few ounces. So don't think that, oh, just mini humans. No, we were very, very small at the time. When we were laying eggs and stuff like that, we were very, very small. Don't think in large portions, because that would come later on. But I'm talking about the brain and the development of the brain. When you get to, excuse a cough, developing the brainstem and the sciatic nerve, and we develop a backbone along with legs, feet, and hands, the main purpose of the brainstem and the central and the sciatic nerve was for us to learn what was dangerous and what was not. How to process that and save that came lots later. But the first process that we would have to figure out was danger or no danger, run or have fun, and food or no food. That would be the main thing that we would look for. We didn't look for Saturday Night Live for us to laugh at. We looked for, oh, we found this field that has a lot of food. We're going to live. Let's our short life living on that. We may have been no more than just a simple tsetse fly that lived in fruits and stuff like that for about 24 hours as we became an adult and laying eggs. We don't have a full concept of that, but the simple concept of that, this is the development of a human being. And how we become more than that took millions of years before we got to where we could even figure out how humans were real and living upon the earth to what we know. Let me tell you, that's only been 600,000 years ago that actually happened. And the development of it would be needed until we could stop being truly asexual, even though that would be a hard part for us to do away with. Even some people today are born asexual, even though there's XX chromosome, XY chromosome, they're not all equal. And sometimes there's a little bit more Y in it, and so the person's going to act a little bit more towards the Y. Sometimes there's a little bit more X, and so the person's going to be a little bit more X. Even though it may be XY or XX, there may be some Y thrown into the XX that causes it to do this or act like this and that. A fact, because we're not much further along in our evolution than when we learn how to take a rock and break open a nutshell or something else to get food. Or we could use a rock to hurt somebody or even the ones we love or cared about to get food or defend ourselves. I mean, it took a while since then, but we have made it. We have come a long way. But that's our development. It's not evolution. Like I said, evolution is this more than one species living within an area and they develop different ways of living. Just like we're not developed on one part of the earth, we're developed all over the earth within a few hundred years of each other. And depending upon where the first humans come out is to what we're like. Self-preservation still presents itself, but nonetheless, that's how it all came about to be. And the way that we process it is still there. There's still lots more to go on. And in my next little thing, I want to explain to you a little bit of more in depth about the brain. But I want you to realize it was just your sciatic nerve and your brainstem was the first development. That's all we had when we became us. And from there, there's certain steps. And we're not past that yet, even though we're fashioned about our own little beliefs. If we can figure something out or know for a fact that it is, we'll come up with our own little fiction about stuff and we'll write about it until it becomes factual. But we don't know that it is. After all, Columbus did not discover America, nor did Columbus figure out that the earth was not flat, but round. Anyway, I'm going to sign off, Bill. I'm going to let you have it, and I'll be back tomorrow with more on Middle Truth. Bye-bye.